Sup comrades, today we're going to be taking a look at Yokio, the Netflix original anime series in which Jaden Smith helps a communist get away with terrorism. Okay, so we were all pretty much under the impression that this was going to be bad. Okay, the trailer they released a couple weeks ago, it didn't really excite many people, but I just wasn't expecting what we ended up getting. Because what we actually got, the final product, all 6 episodes, were actually worse than I was originally expecting. This series was awful. Just every aspect you can think of that makes a good series was lacking here. So the story follows Kaz Khan, played by, of course, Jaden Smith, who is a type of demon hunter guy. I don't know, they really don't explain anything about his powers, where his powers come from. All of that's just a big mess. Anyway, he's part of this rich family. He lives in, like the elite part of this big city, Yokio. Basically, he recently broke up with his girlfriend, and now he's on top of the bachelor's list in the center of town. They have this big tower with the city's top eligible bachelors on it. And yeah, he's trying to uphold his reputation or whatever. He's got Archangelo, who's his rival. He's like the number 2 bachelor, and they're always butting heads. But eventually this girl named Helena gets possessed, and he exorcises her, and it turns her into a communist. So yeah, pretty much the rest of the series is Kaz and his friends getting into hijinks, fighting a few demons here and there, with the overarching plot of Helena becoming a terrorist, and Kaz and friends having to help her escape the city. So here's the thing, and if there are any defenders of this series, this is what they're going to bring up. This show is meant to be a parody. It is a comedic satire of anime series that isn't meant to be taken seriously. But the thing is, none of it works as a parody. Like, it has a lot of these different anime cliches in it, and it's obviously self-aware that these are anime cliches, but it doesn't do anything with them. Like, it'll show a panty shot, and it'll be like, hey guys, look at us, it's a panty shot. But they don't do anything interesting or unique with these ideas. Like, if it wasn't advertised as a parody, you wouldn't be able to tell. And this show is completely humorless. Like, they try jokes, you can tell when they're trying to be funny, but they literally never are. Some of the attempts at jokes just happen out of nowhere, don't really have any meaning. What we're supposed to find funny is, oh, look at how random this is, isn't it funny? Kaz has this mech who follows him around, this robot who, gives him advice and flies him everywhere and stuff. In one episode, his battery dies, and it's revealed that he's actually being piloted by a little old woman because he's actually like an Evangelion parody or whatever. This could be funny, but the execution, the timing is just all off, and it just comes across as really bland, trying to pander to an anime audience. There's one episode with a running joke where Kaz gets a tuxedo which he thinks is black, but it's actually the darkest shade of midnight blue. And the joke is that everyone makes a big deal about it, even though it's just like the most mundane of things, no one should care. And they keep referencing it throughout the episode. Eventually he does switch to a black tuxedo, but it comes back to bite him in the ass, because as it turns out, midnight blue is in this season, and when he fights a demon, he can't hide from the demon because the sky is midnight blue and he's wearing a black tuxedo, so the demon can find him. Just none of it is funny. Like, it might have been mildly amusing if you only used it once, but they just keep calling back to it. There's also this running thing, and I'm not even going to call it a joke, where Kaz carries around this giant Toblerone bar. It is one of the most blatant product placements ever, and if a movie or a TV show is going to have a blatant product placement, I'd like to see something cool done with it. I mean, if you saw the Power Rangers movie that came out this year, one of the most blatant product placements I've ever seen in a movie, but they actually had fun with it, and it ended up being one of the more enjoyable parts of that movie. But this is just like, hey guys, I have a big Toblerone. Do you want a big Toblerone? Oh man, I love Toblerone. The only time I was mildly amused, and I mean very mildly, all I did was grin, was when they revealed that in this world, French Canada was actually its own country. I thought that was pretty clever, but they don't really do anything with it, so it's just a small detail. But anyway, one of the reasons why this series is so unfunny, because a lot of the jokes here did have potential to be funny, is that the technical aspects of this series are really, really bad. The animation is so bland and dull and choppy and awkward. Like, holy shit. There are so many scenes in this show where it's just a still image of a character and they're talking, their mouth is flapping like this. It does look worse than most anime. Even dubbed anime for that matter. Like, the lip syncing here really seemed off. But yeah, it's just a still image of the character, their mouth is moving, and literally nothing else. Like, they aren't doing anything with their body, they aren't being expressive, it's just a still image. It makes everything feel so stiff and artificial and bland, it's awful. And yeah, the rest of the animation really isn't that great. Like I said, it's choppy, it seems like a lot of the time they were missing a lot of in-between frames, and it just seemed really cheap. Moving on to the voice acting, holy shit, Jaden Smith. Like, even though Will Smith is your father, like, how did you get this role? How did someone listen to your voice acting voice and been like, you know what, that's the kid we need for our anime series? Every line he has seems so monotone and out of place. It just makes him so obnoxious to listen to. I hated his character so much. As for the most part though, the voice acting wasn't terrible, aside from a few other voices that really irritated me. And Yokio is a pretty diverse place. There's a lot of people with different accents, and honestly, it felt like every time there was a character with an accent, the voice actor was faking it, because they just sounded awful. Suppose I should talk about some of the other characters. Kaz has these two friends that he hangs out with all the time. They like run a bar or something. There's one episode where one of them gets turned into a woman, and it's supposed to be funny, but it's not. You have Helena, and I wasn't exaggerating when I said she turns into a communist. In fact, Kaz also ends up turning into a communist by the end of this fucking series. Helena's always going around and she's like, fuck the bourgeoisie and capitalism. And near the end of the series, of course, she ends up blowing up the bachelor's board. Spoilers. But luckily, there's a Grand Prix in town, and they're gonna use it to hop into a car and drive her out of the city. And they can do this because Kaz takes the place of a Soviet woman who was supposed to drive in the Grand Prix. And yes, I did say Soviet woman, because the Soviet Union is still a thing in Yokio. It takes place in, well, I'm assuming 2017, because we saw that Kaz was born in 1997. So yeah, in this world, the Soviet Union is still around, and they really want to shove it down your throat. It's honestly a bit concerning. Not only do you have this girl we're supposed to root for going full communist, but then you have actual communists. Like, when she arrives, there's this big Soviet Union flag in the background. She got like the hammer and sickle on everything. There's people there waving waving the Soviet flags, and I don't know, man, it was kind of weird. There's literally one line where Kaz says, "Communism forever." I don't know, is any of this supposed to be funny? Because, you know, if it's all a joke, then sure, whatever. But because none of it is, it's kind of alarming. And on that note, they try to push this, like, you know, sort of anti-capitalism thing. Just, you know, how, like, oh, there's people who are poor in Yokio. This really isn't the greatest city in the world after all. There's a lot of people who are suffering at the expense of the rich elites. Which, you know, is a fine message. It's been done to death, but, you know, whatever. But it's so shoehorned in at the end. 98% of the series takes place in the elite part of Yokio, and then there's just this one section near the end, during the Grand Prix when they're escaping, when they drive through the slums, he's like, maybe things aren't that great after all. And that's it. That's all we ever see of that. Anyway, then the series ends, hopefully for good, where things are pretty much just the way they always were. And then that's it. He's like, things are the same, but I feel like something bad's gonna happen, and then it just ends. And there's one more thing about the series that felt kind of weird to me. You know, I don't think an artist should ever have to censor their vision. Like, you know, if their vision, is a TV MA series, then I think they should have the right to make a TV MA series and not have to censor it just so it gets more views. But this series could have literally been TV PG if they took out some of the swear words. That's literally the only thing that makes this a mature rated series. So it just seems weird to me that they would force in a couple fucks, because if they didn't, then the series could have been available to a much wider audience. Yeah, I just wasted 2.5 hours I'll never get back. It's not like it's the worst thing I've ever seen, but just every aspect about it was very below average. I'd probably give it a final score of 3 out of 10. It was very unpleasant to watch, and I do not recommend it at all. But anyway, that's that. Thank you all so much for watching. You can leave your thoughts on Yokio in the comments below. Remember to seize the means of production, and I will see you all in the next video.